My name's Wyatt. I make my living fixing cars. It's not the kind of gig that gets you a corner office or a fancy title, but it pays the bills and keeps the fridge stocked. I live in an old, creaky house on the edge of Seattle, the one my folks left me after they died in a car wreck. Nothing special about it. Peeling paint, a porch that groans under every step, and a shed out back where I spend most evenings tinkering with junkers. I swear, I'll get 'em running one day. The neighborhood's quiet, the sort where folks mow their lawns on Saturdays and nod hello when they pass, but I keep to myself, always. Makes things easier. Most days blur together. I roll out of bed, pull on a flannel shirt and jeans, head to the shop to battle oil leaks and busted transmissions, then home for microwave dinners and the hum of an old radio spinning classic rock. I don't complain. It's my life and it's mine. But sometimes when the house gets too quiet, I almost hear the echoes of my parents' voices, or catch a whiff of mom's cooking hanging in the air. Then I head to the shed, crank the music, and lose myself under the hood of a 70s Chevy that's been dead longer than it's been alive. That's how I chase away the emptiness. That night felt no different, or so I thought. Rain hammered down in sheets, that bone-chilling damp that seeps into everything, pounding the roof since dusk. I was in the shed, hands black with grease, wrestling a stubborn bolt on the Chevy's engine block. The radio murmured a Springsteen tune at half volume, and the single bulb overhead flickered like it was ready to quit. Then I heard it. A dull thud, a soft knock at the front door. I froze, wrench still in my hand. Nobody knocks at my place, especially not this late. For a second, I figured I'd imagined it, but the knock came again. Gentler, almost hesitant. I wiped my hands on a rag, turned down the music, and stepped out into the downpour. The porch light cast a pale glow on the wet grass. I cracked the door and there she was. A young woman about my age, shivering under the overhang. Her dark hair plastered to her face, soaked through, and her thin jacket clung to her, splattered with mud. No bag, no umbrella, nothing. Just her, like she'd walked straight out of a storm from hell. "Sorry," she said, her voice soft but steady, despite her chattering teeth. "I know it's late, but can I come in? I got turned around, and my phone's dead." I blinked, caught off guard. She didn't seem dangerous, but I don't invite strangers inside. Still, her eyes, big and brown, raw with fear, held me there. They weren't begging, exactly, but they carried a weight I couldn't shake. "Yeah," I said, stepping aside. "Come on in. You're drenched." She nodded and brushed past me as she entered. The scent of rain and wet fabric filled the air while she dripped on the hardwood. I grabbed a fresh towel from the bathroom and handed it over. "Hair dry off. I'll make you something warm." "Thanks," she replied, wrapping herself in it. Her fingers trembled as she clutched it tight. I headed to the kitchen, put on water, and dug out a tin of chamomile tea I hadn't touched in years. While it heated, I glanced her way. She was taking in the faded wallpaper, the mismatched furniture, the stack of car magazines on the coffee table. "Ness place," she said, and I could tell she meant it even if it wasn't true. "I'm Wyatt," I tossed out, leaning against the counter. "And you?" "Sloane," she answered, finally meeting my eyes. And yeah, I look like a drowned rat. Long story. I raised an eyebrow as I poured the tea. "I've got time. If you want to share." She let out a quiet laugh, more relief than amusement. "Maybe." The short version: I was hitchhiking back to school in Seattle. Last year of college. The guy who picked me up got weird ideas. We argued, and he dumped me a few miles from here. Didn't realize how out of the way it was. She paused, sipped the tea I handed her. "I saw your light. Figured it was my best shot." I nodded, letting it sink in. "That sounds rough. You okay? Did he hurt you?" "No," she said quickly. "He just scared me and left me in the rain." I pointed to the old gas heater in the corner. "Park yourself there. Warm up." She shuffled over, still gripping the towel, and sank into the armchair. The heater hummed, casting a soft orange glow on her face. For the first time I noticed how pretty she was. Not flashy makeup pretty, but quiet, like she didn't know it herself. "You live alone here?" "Since I was 18, I said shortly. "Parents gone. Car accident. You get used to it." Her face softened, and for a beat, I thought she'd offer sympathy, but she just nodded, like she understood more than she let on. "You're kind of a saint for that, you know." I snorted and grabbed a blanket from the couch. "Far from it. I just hate seeing folks freeze." I tossed it to her. "You can crash on the sofa tonight. I'll drive you to the bus stop in the morning." She wrapped up in it, her shoulders easing. "Thanks, Wyatt, I mean it. I didn't think I'd feel safe tonight." I shrugged and flicked off the kitchen light. "Get some rest." As I headed to my room, her voice stopped me, soft as the rain outside. "Wyatt, I'm glad I knocked on your door." I didn't turn, just nodded. "Me too." The next morning I woke to that lingering rain smell. The sticky kind that clings even after the storm. The house was quiet, save for the floorboards creaking under my feet as I padded to the kitchen. I glanced at the sofa where Sloane had slept, half convinced she'd been a fever dream. But there she was, bundled in the old blanket, one arm under her head, breathing steady. My oversized sweater hung loose over her hands. For a moment, I stood there, watching the morning light filter through the blinds and touch her dark strands. Then I shook it off and fired up the coffee maker. The hiss must have woken her, because she stirred and blinked into the light. "Morning," she said, voice rough but warm. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, the blanket slipping to her waist. "Habit," I replied, pouring 2 mugs. "Shop opens at 8. Milk or sugar?" "Black's fine," she said, swinging her legs down. She padded barefoot across the floor. "Still in my sweater. Smells good. You do this every day?" "Pretty much." I handed her a mug and pulled bread and eggs from the fridge. "Not a gourmet, but I can scramble eggs and toast." "Hungry?" Her eyes lit up and she nodded. "Starving. I owe you for all this." We sat at the little kitchen table, digging into eggs and slightly burnt toast. The silence wasn't awkward, it felt easy, like we'd done it 100 times. She asked about the shed, how I got into fixing cars. I told her how I dropped out of trade school after my folks died, just to hold on to the house and keep from selling it. "It's nothing fancy," I said, gesturing to the peeling wall. "But it's mine." Sloane listened, fork halfway to her mouth. "That's tough, Wyatt. Losing them so young, and you kept going." "Didn't have a choice," I shrugged. "And you, studying art in Seattle?" "Yeah," she said softly, "mostly painting. My folks think it's a waste. They've got everything mapped out for me. Business school, job in the family firm, the whole deal. They're relentless. Everything's planned, except what I actually want." She dropped her gaze to her plate, tracing the fork along the edge. "Being here, even just one night, makes me feel like I can finally breathe." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. After breakfast I grabbed the keys. "Come on, I'll drop you at the stop. You'll be back on campus by noon." The drive was short, down slick streets lined with evergreens. Sloane stared out the window, fingers drumming on the mug she'd borrowed to take with her. We talked about everything and nothing, her favorite painter, some guy named Rothko, my thing for old engines, the Seattle rain that never really quits. At the stop, she turned to me, her brown eyes catching the gray light. "Hey Wyatt. What if I come back, not because I'm lost, but just to talk? Would you like that?" I laughed, surprised. "You want to hang in my beat-up shed?" She grinned for real, not the tired smile from last night. "Yeah, exactly that. I'll stock up on tea," I said, leaning against the truck. "But don't make it a habit. I ain't running a motel." She laughed as she climbed out. "Deal." But as she headed for the bus, I felt a click in my chest, like a gear finally slotting into place. The drive home felt too quiet, and the sofa looked emptier than it should. That weekend she showed up again. I was elbow deep in a carburetor when I heard the knock. There she was, with a paper bag from the bakery down the block. Figured fresh bagels would hit the spot. She said, her jacket dotted with raindrops. "Got any more tea?" I wiped my hands on a rag, a smile sneaking out that I couldn't hide. "You're spoiling me with all this tea." She laughed and followed me inside. And just like that, it started. She came the next weekend, then the one after. She'd perch on a stool in the shed, watch me work, ask questions about spark plugs and oil filters. I showed her how to swap a tire, cracked up when she smeared grease on her cheek. One morning, we made pancakes, and she burned half of 'em, cursing my old skillet while I teased her about her cooking skills. Little by little she opened up. Her folks owned a real estate company in the city, and they expected her to jump in after school. "They've scheduled my life down to the minute," she said one evening, curled on the sofa with a mug in hand. "What I study, who I marry, where I live. Here with you, I feel like me. Not their version." I looked at her, the lamplight dancing across her face, and felt something I hadn't known since before my parents died. Like the house wasn't just a place to crash anymore. It was waking up. "You're always welcome here," I said, my voice deeper than I meant. "Long as you don't torch the kitchen." She laughed and chucked a pillow at me. "No promises." Those weekends turned into our ritual. She'd show up with a sketch pad or takeout, and we'd talk for hours about her art, my cars, or nothing at all. I started looking forward to that knock, the way her voice filled the empty corners of the house. I wouldn't admit it, but I dreaded her leaving. The quiet always crept back in when she was gone. Days slipped by and Sloane became part of the routine, like a tune you hum without thinking. The shed smelled of oil and damp, but now it held traces of her coffee grounds, a hint of citrus from her shampoo, that sketchpad she'd left on my workbench. I'd catch myself smiling for no reason, thinking of her laugh or the way she'd squint at a spark plug like it was a puzzle. I didn't name it out loud. It was just us, filling the house's hollow spots with something I hadn't felt in years. But I wasn't blind. She was a college kid from a world of money and maps, me, a grease monkey with calloused hands in a house weighing me down. Whatever this was, it felt fragile. Like a flame that'd flicker out if I stared too hard. It was a Thursday afternoon, rain lashing in curtains, battering the shed roof like it meant to punch through. I was under the hood of a '60s Mustang, one of my favorites, fighting a stubborn fuel line. The single lamp buzzed, throwing long shadows on the concrete. I heard the side door creak. And there was Sloane, shaking water from her jacket, holding 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate from the cafe around the corner. "Thought you could use a break," she said, setting them on the workbench. "It's a flood out there." I wiped my hands, grinning. "You trudged through that just to bring me chocolate. You'll catch your death. Worth it." She shot back, hopping onto her stool. She slid a mug my way, steam curling between us. "Besides, I like watching you work. You've got this look like you're fixing world peace." I chuckled and sipped. The chocolate was thick, warming me from the inside. "World peace is easier than this line. You sticking around, or just delivery?" She tilted her head, her brown eyes catching the light. "I'm staying. Unless you kick me out." "Never," I said too fast. I turned back to the engine, hoping she didn't spot the heat climbing my neck. We fell into our rhythm. She asked about the car. I explained moves I'd done 1,000 times, but they felt fresh describing them to her. She leaned in closer, pointing at a hose. "What's that for?" "Cooling," I said. Voice steady despite her nearness, close enough to smell the rain on her jacket. "Keeps the engine from boiling over." "Like you," she said, softer, teasing but with an edge I couldn't pin. I looked up, and her gaze was on me, not the car. The air thickened, heavy like before a storm breaks. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came. She slid off the stool, stepped closer, her boots scraping the concrete. "Wyatt," she murmured, barely audible. "I've never felt this, with anyone." My heart pounded like a piston, throat tight. Like I'm exactly where I belong. She took another step, so close I could see raindrops on her lashes. "Like I could stay here with you, and it'd be enough." I froze, wrench still gripped. The shed felt too small. Before I could process it, she leaned in, her lips brushing mine, soft, hesitant but sure. It wasn't some movie kiss, no fireworks or slow-mo. It was real, warm. Tasting of chocolate and rain. I dropped the wrench with a clatter and kissed her back, hands finding her waist. Time stopped, the world shrinking to just her. When we pulled apart, her eyes were wide, like she'd surprised herself too. "If I said I wanted to stay forever," she whispered, "what would you say?" I swallowed, hands still on her. "I'd say you're crazy. But I'd be lying if I claimed I didn't want it too." My voice cracked, and I laughed to shake off the weight. "Sloane, you come from another world. Your folks, your life. How's this supposed to work?" She shook her head, fingers tracing my cheek. "I don't care, it's about this, us." She paused, searching my eyes. "And you." "Yeah." It slipped out before I could stop it. "More than I should." That night, we didn't leave the shed. We spread an old blanket, leaned against the Mustang, and talked until the rain softened to a drizzle. She told me about the pressure at home, her dad's real estate empire, her mom's endless charity galas, how they'd charted her life without asking. I opened up about the accident, how I'd locked the door on everyone else because losing hurt too much. Somewhere in those hours, we crossed a line. Not just the kiss, but something deeper. Like we'd quit pretending it was chance. When she dozed off on my shoulder, I didn't move. I didn't want to break it. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't scare me. Because it wasn't quiet anymore. It was full of her. The morning after the kiss, I woke with Sloane beside me, her head on my arm, the blanket tangled around us on the shed floor. The rain had quit, leaving a damp chill, the Mustang standing silent guard. I watched her sleep for a moment, face peaceful in the gray light through the window. My chest swelled. Like something long empty had clicked into place. I didn't want to stir, didn't want to shatter the spell, but life doesn't let us linger forever. We got up, brewed coffee, and settled at the kitchen table like nothing had changed, though everything had. Her hand brushed mine, reaching for sugar, and she smiled, small and private. Like we shared a secret the world couldn't touch. "Last night was real, right?" she asked, voice low but certain. "Yeah," I said, thumb tracing the mog's rim. "As real as it gets." I wanted to say more, ask what we were doing, where this led, but the words stuck. She was still Sloane, the art student, daughter of a real estate king. And I was still Wyatt, the mechanic in a ghost-haunted house. But those days it didn't matter. Then it all crashed down. 3 days after the kiss we were in the kitchen, laughing over a botched batch of pancakes. She'd dropped one, and I was ribbing her, when I heard tires crunch on the gravel outside. I peeked out the window and saw a gleaming black Mercedes in the drive. My gut twisted. Nobody around here drove something like that. The doorbell buzzed, sharp and demanding. Sloane went still, spatula hovering over the pan. "Who is that?" she asked, but her tone said she knew. I opened the door and a man in a tailored coat stood there, gray hair slicked back, eyes cold and appraising. He sized me up like dirt on his shoe. "I'm Harlan Voss," he said flatly. "Sloane's father. I believe my daughter's here." Sloane appeared behind me in the living room, face ashen. "Dad," she muttered. "How did you, your phone," he cut in, raising a hand. "The tracking app. You've been gone for days, Sloane. Your mother's worried." His gaze slid over me, then back to her. "Get your things. We're leaving." I stood there, useless. As Sloane snatched her jacket from the couch. She avoided my eyes. "Wyatt was good to me," she told her dad, voice shaking. "He helped when I was stuck." Harlan Voss's eyes narrowed, taking in my stained jeans, the cluttered room. "I appreciate you keeping her safe," he said, but his tone screamed otherwise. "But this ends now. Come on, Sloane." She hesitated. Her eyes finally meeting mine. They were wet, full of regret or surrender. I couldn't tell. "Sorry," she whispered, so quiet I almost missed it. Then she followed him to the car. Boots dragging on the floor. The door slammed and they were gone, taillights fading into the morning mist. The house felt wrong after that, too big, too silent. Her half-full coffee mug sat untouched on the table. The sofa smelled like her shampoo, and in the shed, her sketch pad lay on the workbench, an unfinished drawing of the Mustang staring back. I threw myself into double shifts at the shop, buried in oil changes and tire rotations, but nothing helped. Every creak in the house, every hum from the heater, screamed her absence. Weeks dragged on with no word, no call, no text. She'd never given me her number, and I didn't have hers. I wondered if her dad had taken her phone or if she'd just decided I wasn't worth it. Either way, the emptiness hit harder than before she came. The house slipped back to its old self, too quiet, too hollow, like she'd never been there. I'd fallen back into routine, shop by day, shed by night, the same Springsteen tracks looping on the radio. But it wasn't the same. The mugs were washed and put away, her sketchpad shoved in a drawer I wouldn't open. Still, the air hung heavy with her gone. I'd catch myself staring at the door, waiting for a knock that never came. I didn't know if she'd forgotten me or if her dad had locked her in that shiny world of theirs. Either way, I told myself to let go. People leave. That's what they do. It was a Tuesday evening. A damp November night where the rain doesn't fall, it clings. I was in the shed, sanding rust off the Chevy's fender, the scrape echoing in the quiet. The radio was off for once. I didn't want the noise. I'd lost myself in the work when I heard it. A soft knock at the front door. My heart skipped, because I knew that sound. I wiped my hands on my jeans, pulse racing, and walked to the door. There she stood, Sloane in the porch light, dark hair damp and curling, her old jacket zipped to her chin. No bag, no fancy ride, just her, holding a to-go cup of tea from the cafe down the block. Our eyes locked, and hers were different now. Not scared or lost but steady, like she'd made a choice and wouldn't back down. "Hey," she said, voice firm but gentle. "Brought tea. Figured you might be out." I stood frozen like the world had hit pause. "Sloane," I said, voice rougher than I meant. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward, the porch groaning under her boots. "I'm sorry I left like that. No warning, no goodbye. I didn't want to." She paused, breath visible in the chill. "I told my dad everything. Not all about us, but what I want, my life, my choices. He didn't take it well, but I'm done. I want to be here with you." I stared, the words sinking in slow. "You sure? Your family's school. Seattle's not your world, Sloane." She smiled, small but fierce. "This is my world now. I'm not running anymore. I choose this." She lifted the tea, eyes sparkling. "So, you gonna let me in, or do I stand out here all night?" I laughed, the sound cracking the tension in my chest, and stepped aside. "Get in here." She brushed my shoulder as she passed. And the house shifted right then. Warmer, fuller, like it'd been waiting for her. We settled in the living room, her on the sofa, me in the armchair, the heater humming between us. She told me about the fight with her dad, how she'd stood her ground, turned down business school, walked away from the life they'd scripted. "He cut me off financially," she said with a shrug. "No inheritance, no fancy apartment. I've got a part-time gig at an art supply store now, crashing with a friend near campus. But I'm free, Wyatt. For the first time I'm free." I leaned forward, elbows on knees. "And you come back here, to a guy with a half-falling down house and a fridge full of leftovers." She laughed and set the tea on the coffee table. Exactly that. Because you saw me in the mess and didn't look away. Because this, she gestured around, the peeling walls, the worn furniture, feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I crossed the room and pulled her into my arms. She hugged me tight, face against my chest. We stayed like that, rain tapping the window, the world outside forgotten. You're not sleeping on the sofa this time, I murmured. She pulled back, eyes searching mine, a smile playing on her lips. Good, that's what I was hoping. That night we didn't talk futures or impossible promises, we just started, right there in the quiet of my old, creaking house. In the weeks that followed, Sloane eased in bit by bit, a sketchpad here, a toothbrush there, a stack of art books on the coffee table. We built a life, not with grand gestures or fairy tale endings, but with the small stuff. Morning coffee, her drawings on the fridge, my tools next to her paints in the shed. I never figured a knock from a stranger could change everything, but Sloane did. She wasn't just a girl seeking shelter. She chased out the silence, turned a house back into a home. Looking back, it wasn't the kiss or the late night talks that mattered. It was the choice we made every day for each other. Even when it scared us, even when the world didn't get it. Love doesn't always come with a blueprint or guarantees. Sometimes, it's just a knock in the rain, a chance you take, a hand you hold when you could walk away. And for us, that's what it was. In the darkest corners of our lives, where silence hangs like a too heavy blanket, sometimes a quiet knock sounds at the door, a whisper from fate, inviting us to open up, to risk, to love without a safety net. The story of Wyatt and Sloane hits us with a tenderness that grips the heart. Him, a mechanic with calloused hands, guarding a house haunted by echoes of a shattered past. Her, an artist choked by the golden chains of a future planned by others. Their meeting, born from relentless downpour and a gaze that silently pleads, was no polished romance novel, but a raw, breathing lesson in the fragility and strength of real love. What does this fleeting embrace teach us, this chocolate and rain kiss, this flight and triumphant return? That love doesn't bow to tidy plans, family expectations, or the fears that pin us down. It's the bold choice to pick the warm chaos of a peeling house over a cold glass tower. To trade illusionary safety for the vulnerability that makes us alive. Wyatt, alone with his ghosts, learned that silence isn't a friend. It's a call to let in the light, a laugh that fills the gaps, a hand that banishes shadows. Sloane, trapped in her chains, found that freedom isn't escape. It's the courage to say no to the voices outside and listen to the one within, wild and unbreakable. This tale touches deep because it's ours. How many times have we locked the door in fear, letting the spark that could have lit our days slip by? It urges us to embrace the unexpected, to choose every day the one who lets us breathe, to turn a simple encounter into an endless home. Because life, in its merciless beauty, whispers that true happiness isn't heaven's gift, it's a heart's decision, terrifying, uplifting, unforgettable. And you, what door have you opened that changed everything? Share in the comments your own lesson of love in the rain, the one that taught you to choose soulmates beyond the surfaces. If these words struck a chord, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these stories that warm the soul and reignite inner flames. Together, we fling wide the doors of the heart. See you soon for the next tale that'll make you hum.